Very good morning to all. We'll start our class, that is class number 5 today. And we are going to talk about the manometers and what is buoyancy, flotation, all these things today. I think we briefly talked about manometers in the last class. So we are going to continue where we left. So let's refresh our memories. I think as you all know, a manometer is a device which is mainly been used to determine pressure at different locations. It mainly consists of glass, a plastic tube, U-tube types of thing, and then contain one or more fluids having a different density, right? To keep this manometer in a manageable level, heavy fluids such as mercury, heavy density fluid mercury are sometimes used if large pressure difference are anticipated. So I think briefly, as you know, we have talked about, and this height difference, how does this height difference in manometer is being determined? It is the delta Z, actually, del P by rho G, or actually rho P is rho GH, like pressure differences, so pressure head is rho GH. So from that, you can determine how much height elevated or how much height depressed, depending on if you use two different liquids of two different density. So let's look into this example first. I think as you know, as you can see from this schematic diagram, the tube has a one side gas is filled up, another side there's a liquid elevation. And that if you take the 1 and 2 is the datum line or the horizontal line, that the elevation of the height is h, right? And that if the pressure at this position is atmospheric pressure, for the elevation, the total increase in the height will be rho gh. So the pressure at 2 or pressure at 1, because due to hydrostatic equilibrium, pressure at 1 and 2 will be equal, because since this manometer is placed horizontal to the ground. So the pressure at 2 or pressure at 1 will be equal to P atmospheric plus rho G. So we have talked about all these things just to refresh our memory, and those of you joined late in the class, so that it becomes easy for you to understand. So let's look into another example. I think the same example here. Rho is the density of the fluid in the tube, and the cross-sectional area of the tube has no effect. That is the critical thing. Whatever the cross-sectional area of this glass tube has no effect on the pressure at different position, right? However, the diameter of the tube should be large enough to ensure that the surface tension effect and the capillary rise is negligible, because if you increase the diameter of the tube, if it is large enough, then this effects of surface tension and capillary can be avoided. Let's this is an example I have given you. You should solve this example in your spare time. A manometer is being used here to measure the pressure in a tank. The fluid used here has a specific gravity of 0.85. As you can see, the dark fluid has a specific gravity 0.85, and the manometer column height is 55 centimeters. As you can see, it is given here, as shown in the figure. If the local atmospheric pressure is 96 kilopascal, so the atmospheric pressure you are considering 96 kilopascal, determine the absolute pressure within the tank. You have to determine P. So it's very straightforward example. You should solve it and determine the answer. I think it's been solved here. The fluid in the tank has a gas whose density is much lower, because as you can see, the pink is the gas. That's why its density is lower. The specific gravity of the manometer fluid is given 0.85. So the density will be 850 kg per meter cube. And as you know, this equation, P equal to P atmospheric by rho GH. Atmospheric pressure is given, the density is given, determined, G is given H, the height is given how much? 55 centimeters. So this elevation is 55 centimeters. So you just put together all this value and it's come 100.6 kilopascal. So that is the pressure inside this tank, right? So that's how I determined. Let's look into the multi-fluid manometer. Many engineering problem and some manometers involve a couple of two or three different immiscible fluids of different density stacked on top of each other. So I think you can see the picture here. As you can see, there are three different fluids which are stacked on top of each other and having a density, having a height. Obviously, the densities are different, and the height, elevation heights are also different. So the total pressure will be the P1. The pressure here will be the atmospheric pressure plus the pressure head due to this each fluid. That is rho 1 GH1, rho 2 GH2, rho 3 GH3. Right. So let's look into this system. Such system can be analyzed easily by remembering that the pressure change across the fluid column of height h is, what is the change in pressure? That is rho gh. So pressure increase downward in a given fluid or decreasing upward, right? Because as you move from top to bottom, pressure is increasing, and as you move from bottom to up, pressure is decreasing because the pressure is maximum at the bottom and pressure is minimum at the top. And 2 points at the same elevation in a continuous fluid at rest are at the same pressure. That is due to the hydrostatic equilibrium. So we calculated the total pressure, that is the pressure at the point 1 will be equal to P1 or the summation of all the pressure considering the atmospheric pressure which is applicable at top. Okay. Now differential manometer also, yeah, I think I have talked about. Manometers are particularly well suited to measure pressure drop across the horizontal flow section between two specified points due to the presence of a device such as a valve or heat exchanger. So here actually what will happen, that differential pressure, the pressure at the point position 1 and position 2 are different. So the liquid rise or liquid depression will be different, right? So using that concept, you can determine pressure. If you know the pressure at one arm, you can determine the pressure at another arm, right? Because based on the hydrostatic equilibrium. So the working fluid can be either a gas or liquid, whose density is rho 1. It is given here rho 1. The density of the manometer fluid is given rho 2, and the diameter of the fluid height, so the differential height of the fluid is given h. So if this is, that is the increase in the height, right, h. So the relationship can be established for the pressure difference P1 minus P2 obtained by starting at point 1. When point 1 is P1, we are considering moving along the tube by adding or subtracting the rho gh term until you reach point 2. Just like what you did. And so it is here P1, then the point A here P1 GH A plus H, because this is H and this is A. Then this point again it will be minus rho 2 GH, and then it will be rho 1 GA, and that will be equal to the point 2 pressure, because this is, as you start from here, as you move down, this is the pressure at P1. Then here the pressure will be for the height A plus H, but the density is of the fluid is rho 1. So rho 1 G A plus H, that is the total pressure. And then as you move back again, this position, the pressure decreased by this amount, that is rho 2 GH, and then further in the 2 position, rho 1 GH, so that will be 2. So if you just rearrange this term, it is coming P1 minus P2, that is the pressure difference between 1 and 2 is equal to rho 2 minus rho 1 GH, that is the density difference between the higher density minus lower density times GH, that is the height difference between the two fluid column. That's how you difference the pressure. In the differential manometer, you determine the pressure. If you know one pressure, you can determine the pressure at the other. So this is an example. It's given. Water in a tank is pressurized by air, and the pressure is measured by a multi-fluid manometer as shown in the figure below. The tank is located on a mountain at an altitude of 1400 meters, where the atmospheric pressure is 85.6 kilopascal. Determine the air pressure in the tank if H1, that is this side is 0.1 meter, H2 0.2 meter, and H3 0.35 meter. Take the densities of water, oil, and mercury. So here this is water, that is 1000 kg, oil having 850, and mercury having 13,600 kg per meter cube. So we have to determine the pressure in the tank, right? So you just consider differential manometer concept, because I have given the solution, the pressure is P1 plus for the height rho 1 GH1, that is for the water height, right? And similarly, oil height rho oil GH2, because that is the, that is the oil height, because the oil has increased rho 2 GH2. And then finally, mercury height has been depressed rho mercury GH3 by this amount. By this amount. So that will be minus, and that will be the atmospheric pressure. So you P1 will be P atmospheric minus all these things. Atmospheric pressure given, all the parameters given. So you put together all the term, and then you get the calculation 130 kilopascal. So that is the pressure at P1. That is the water the tank pressure, right? That's how you use the differential manometer concept. Okay, one had one pressure increasing, another had decreasing. That's how you increase. Because, and I have, this is the exercise I have given. You should solve it. I'm not going to go into details. This is exercise 1. This is exercise 2. You solve this numerical in home and then get back to me in the next class. Okay. So now I'm going to look at inverted U-tube differential manometer. This is a new concept, inverted. So far we have talked about normal U-tube manometer. What happens if the U-tube manometer is inverted? So it is the same principle we are going to apply here. Actually, you see this is an inverted U-tube manometer containing a light liquid. The two ends of the tube are connected to the points whose difference of pressure is to be measured. It is to be used for measuring difference of low pressure. The figure shows an inverted U-tube differential manometer connected to points A and B. Let the pressure at A is more than pressure B. So liquid is going to rise if the pressure is more, and then liquid is going to fall in the right column, that is B. So we are just considering H1. Small h1 is the height of liquid in the left limb. This is H1. H2 is the height of the liquid in the right limb. This is H2. The difference in the liquid height is H. This is H. Density of liquid at A is ρ1, and similarly density of liquid at B is ρ2. Density of light liquid is here actually. This is ρs. PA is the pressure A and PB is the pressure B. So if you take x prime is the datum line, the pressure in the left limb is PA, that is the pressure here, minus this height, right? P1 GH1, and pressure in the right limb below PB minus ρ2 GH2 minus ρ GH. ρs is the liquid, that is for this lighter liquid. So if you equate these two pressure, because as respect to the datum line pressure should be same, then PA minus PB is become ρ1 GH1 minus ρ2 GH2 minus ρs GH. So that is the expression for inverted manometer. Let's look into this example. Water is flowing through to defined pipe to which an inverted differential manometer having an oil of specific gravity 0.8 is connected. You can see here oil of specific gravity 0.8. The pressure head in the pipe A is 2 meter of water. So in the pipe A, this is actually 2 meter of water. Find the pressure in the pipe B for the manometer reading as shown in figure. The pressure head at A is given PA by PG, 2 meter of water, right? Because that's why given. So PA will be ρ GH, ρ G into 2. So it is pressure head given. So pressure head and pressure is two different, right? Pressure head is the unit of length. So that is given 2 meter of water. So that will be equivalent to ρ GH. That is ρ 1000 GH. That will be the pressure 19,620 Newton per meter square. And if you take XX prime in the datum line, then left limb pressure will be PA minus ρ1 GH1. So that PA you calculated minus ρ1 GH1, that will be 16,677. That is the pressure. The left limb, right? And pressure below XX in the right limb will go PB minus 1000. Just the formula we have talked about in the previous slide. Minus ρ2 GH2, that is the water, and ρs GHS. Because ρs is actually the specific gravity of oil is 800. Specific gravity 0.8 should be 800. So the pressure below right limb will be PB minus this expression will become. So if you just equilibrate this two equation, pressure at the right limb is coming 1.8599 Newton per meter square. Just equating this. Remember this, we had actually pressure head given. So this you have to convert into pressure. That is the critical part here, okay, for this numerical. Another problem, an inverted differential manometer is connected to pipes A and B which convey water. The fluid in manometer is oil of specific gravity 0.8, just like the previous problem. For the manometer reading shown in the figure, find the pressure difference between A and B. So specific gravity of oil 0.8, so the density will be 800 kg per meter cube. Difference of oil in the two limb 30, it is 30, this is 30, this is 20. So 30 plus 20 minus 30, that is 20 centimeter. If we take this as the datum line, in the left limb pressure is PA minus ρ G. I think this should be not 0. It is mistake. Actually, it will be height of 30 centimeter. Okay, PA minus 1000 into 9.81 to 30, because this is the height. So PA minus 2940. Similarly, right link PB minus 1000 into 9.81. For this side 30 minus 800 into 9.81 is 0.2. So that will be this expression. If you equate these two, PB minus PA will be coming 1569.6. So that is the pressure difference, right? Because you have asked to calculate pressure difference. So that's how you solve nanometer problem. You solve these two numerical I have given here. So you have 4 numericals so far on the manometer. You better solve this. So let us move to the new next chapter, that is buoyancy, rotation, and stability. I think all of you are aware of what this buoyancy is there, right? If you go down to the water, any static water level, you feel pressure, right? So the water try to push you up, but the gravity try to pull you down. So there is a balance of force which actually keeps you floated, right? But if it is heavier, if the object is heavier than the density of the liquid, it will go down. But if it is lesser in the density, it will float on the top of the water. So this is actually how the forces balance each other, right? As you see that a fluid exerts an upward force, as I mentioned, that is called buoyant force. Buoyant force is caused by the increase of pressure in a fluid with depth. So what is the force considered for this flat body? A flat plate of thickness is given H and submerged in a liquid of density PF parallel to the free surface, right? The area of the top and also the bottom surface of the plate is A, and the distance to the free surface is S. That is the distance it's submerged. So the pressure at the top and bottom surface of the plate are, the top surface will be rho GS, because PF is the density, G, and S is the height. So that is the pressure at the top, and bottom will be PF S plus H, because you have to take into consideration the thickness of the plate, right? So these two forces will be this pressure you have calculated. If the area is A, then you multiply with the area, you get force PFGSA act downward, which tries to push it down, and the buoyancy force, which is PFGS plus HA, which try to push you up. So these two forces, the bottom force and top force, balance each other, and the resultant force, that is P1GHA or P1GV. V is H into A is the volume, right? So that's try to keep it balanced or keep it floated on at a certain distance in the liquid. Either it will float or either it will go down, depending on which force is active or which force is actually dominant between these two forces. So this is pretty straightforward things. So where this is actually, I mentioned, this is the volume of the plate, but the relation rho F GV is simply the weight of the liquid whose volume is equal to the volume of the plate. So if you multiply, because as you see, what you have done, P1GHA, P1GV, so V is the volume, right? V is actually HA, height into area, is the volume of the plate. The relation PF/GV, so PF and V is the mass, and mass into G, that is the weight of that plate, right? It's simply the weight of the plate or weight of the liquid which has been displaced, right? So we can conclude that the buoyant force acting on the plate is equal to the weight of the liquid displaced, because if you look into this expression, P1GHA, which is nothing but PFGV, and if you simplify this, because volume is H into A, and this expression is nothing but mass into acceleration due to gravity, that is the weight of the plate. But the weight of the plate is equal to the amount of liquid which has been displaced. So we can say the buoyant force acting on the plate is nothing but the amount of liquid displaced. That is the basic of Archimedes principle. The buoyant force or buoyancy force acting on a body immersed in a fluid is equal to the weight of the fluid which is being displaced by the body, and it's upward through the centroid of the displaced volume. This is the same principle we calculate. If you remember, like using Archimedes principle, all of you calculate bulk density of a material, right? For ceramics, we used to dip it in a water or oil, right? And then using the dry weight by suspended weight by soaked weight, we determine the bulk density, because the denominator is nothing but the amount of water is being displaced, that is the volume, and the top numerator is the mass. So mass by volume, you calculate density. So it is the same principle how you calculate bulk density of a material. So now let's look at the buoyancy force here actually, the floating body here, CG is the center of gravity, B is the point, and FB is the buoyancy force, which is acting upwards, and the weights try to push it down, right? So the total force is the displaced volume, okay? And this is the gamma is actually the amount volume, which is nothing but the floating body weight, right? So the amount of the body, the amount of it going to be submerged is equal to the amount of water it's going to displace, because this is the amount of water displaced from its position, right? Remember, only floating body, only portion of the body is submerged, and the remainder of the body remains suspended or even poking out of the free surface. So this is the white portion is on the surface, which is floating on the top, and this gray area or the blue area is actually under submerged into water, which displays the equivalent amount of water. So let's look into a couple of examples here. Three different floating body is given. One is given floating body because here the density of the body is less than the fluid density, so that is going to float. Then another is, I have given example, rho equal to rho A, that is the density of the body is equal to the density of water, so it's going to remain suspended in the water. And the sinking body, where actually the density is greater than the fluid density, so it's going to sink into the water, right? This is the straightforward example. An example is given here. Actually, crane is used to lower weight into the sea. Density is given 10,025, so it is greater than water density, right? For an underwater construction, determine the tension in the rope of the crane due to a rectangular. The body is rectangular 0.43 millimeter concrete block. So this is a concrete block. I'm sorry, here the crane is used to lower weight into the sea. The density of the seawater is given 1025. And the body, the concrete block density is given 2300 kg per meter cube. To determine the tension in the rope, you have to determine the tension in the rope when it is suspended in the air and completely immersed in water. Two different conditions are given. So let's look into this. The free body diagram I have already shown in the previous slide. The forces acting on the concrete block in air are its weight and the upward pull action, that is the tension. The volume, you can calculate the volume of the concrete block. You have already given the dimension. The forces in the air is nothing but the weight of that block, right? That is rho GV. The rho is given of the concrete block, G you know, and volume already calculated. So that is 10.8 kilonewton, right? That is the tension in the rope, right? That has to be balance each other, right? Because the forces in the rope is equal to the weight of the body. Now, when the the concrete block is immersed in the water, there is an additional force of buoyancy, right? That is acting upward. So now we have to have a force balance. So what we have calculated, now you have to consider the buoyancy force, the density of the seawater given 1025, and volume of that, volume will remain same. So this is the amount of force which is acting upward, because for the water, the density is given 1025. So the total tension will be the weight of the block minus the upward buoyancy force, so that will be 6 kilonewton. Okay, so that so in first case 10.8 kilonewton, second case 6 kilonewton. Note the weight of the concrete block and thus the tension on the rope decreased by 55% in water. So this is 10.8 minus 6 divided by 10.8. So almost 55%, almost half of the tension decrease when it submerged into the water. Another problem, a 17 kg granite rock given density 2700 kg per meter cube is dropped into a lake. The man dives in the water and tries to lift the rock. Okay. Determine how much force the man needs to apply to lift it from the bottom of the lake. Do you think he can do it? Because is it the weight of the man who has to be determined, so that has to be feasible number, right? It should not be 1000 kg. The human body weight cannot be 1000 kg. So let us look into this example. The weight and volume of the rock, weight is mg. I think mass is given 170 kg granite rock, density you know. So it is the amount 1668 Newton. So the volume will be mass by density. In the granite rock, density is given 2700. So that is the volume is 0.06296 meter cube. The buoyancy force acting on the rock is rho GV. Rho of the water is given, I think all of you know, 1000 kg per meter cube. G and volume, that is 618 Newton. That is the buoyancy force. and the weight of the rock was 1668. So the total weight acting on that rock will be weight minus buoyancy force, because buoyancy force always act upwards direction. So that is 1050 Newton, right? So this force corresponds to a mass of 1050 Newton divided by G. So that is the mass, 107 kg, right? This is the pictorial example given. So therefore, a person which can lift has to be a weight of 107 kg. That is feasible, right? A person can have a weight of 107 kg. So if a man with a weight of 107 kg can easily lift the rock. These are the two examples, 5 and 6, I have given here. So you must solve this example when you get a chance for your homework. This has to be solved by all the students. Stability of immersing and floating body. I think how a steamer or a ship, like floats, because stability is a very important criteria. Let's look into this example. How do you determine a body, a floating body, or a suspended body in the water is going to be, stable or unstable? It depends on if it is moved from its original position. If it reaches to its equilibrium position, then it's stable, right? If this spherical ball, if it moves this side or this side, it will reach to its original position, that is this position. Right, there will be restoring couple. So the moment the ball is moved to this position, there will be restoring couple, which will try to bring to its original position, right? This is stable, but in this case, it is unstable, because the moment ball taking to this position, it is not going to come to its previous position, it's going to slide down, right? So this is actually how you determine a body is going to be stable or unstable. Let's look into this example better way. Now, here you can see I have given you a pictorial representation. This is the weight of the body, which is acting downward, right? So this is the center of gravity, right? CG. And another is the buoyant force, which is acting upward, that is given by FB. And C is the centroid, right? So the moment the body is tilted in this position, right? What happens? It displaces the equivalent amount of water, right? And it's the center of, the buoyancy force, the FB, moves from its original position to this position. But it tries to bring it to the center of gravity. The moment it pushes to this position, now the center of gravity has moved. The center had moved, right, from this position to this position. But the center will always try to bring it to the original position, that is parallel or in the same axis of center of gravity. So what happens? This particular body will try to bring it to its original position by this restoring couple, right? Because the center of gravity has moved to the right hand side, it will try to move it back to its original position, that is in the same axis of center of gravity. So this restoring couple will act on it, and the body will be stable. Okay, that is how it's been explained here. You read this text to understand what is written. Now let's look into another example. Next slides. You can see here the buoyant force is below the center of gravity. So the moment you push it to the right hand side, the center of gravity is now on the same line of the buoyant force. But the center of gravity try to push it to the same axis where the center of gravity is. So it will try to take it to this position. So there will be overturning couple. So this will fall back. This is not going to move back to its original position. It is going to fall to the right hand side. This will be an unstable body. Okay. So if center of gravity of the completely submerged body is above the center of buoyancy, the resulting couple formed by the weight and the buoyant force will cause the body to overturn and move to a new equilibrium position. Thus, a completely submerged body with its center of gravity above its center of buoyancy, CG is above its center of buoyancy, is in unstable equilibrium position. Okay, so this is a standard example. So if CG is below the buoyant force, this will be a stable. If CG is above the buoyant force, then it will be an unstable body. But this is not true for all the cases. Okay. For floating body, the stability is more complicated. I was talking about submerged body. This you can see. This is the submerged body or immersed body. But for a floating body, the scenarios are different and it's more complicated. A floating body can be stable even though center of gravity lies above the center of buoyancy, which is it's a fact. This is true since as the body rotates to the buoyant force, it has to shift through the centerer of the newly formed displaced volume. And as illustrated, I'll show you in the next slide that for a slender body, a small rotational displacement can cause the buoyant force and the weight to form an overturning couple. Let's look into this example. So this is an example is given for a floating body. Okay, the top, as you can see, center of gravity is above the buoyant force, and this is C is the centroid. Okay, the moment the body is turned to its right hand position, the centroid is now moved to the C prime, new position, right? Center of the new displaced volume. But the displaced amount of water try to push it back to its equilibrium position. That is, the centroid try to move under the center of gravity. So there is a restraining couple acting on it, and this body will be stable. But for a slender body, you can see here the same concept. What I have talked about, CG is above the buoyancy force, C is here. But here, the moment it turns here, the buoyancy force, the displaced amount of liquid shifts to the left hand side. So the center of gravity is now on the left of the center of gravity. So this body try to move, the center try to move further in the same axis of center of gravity. So this further move to the right hand side, and there is an overturning couple acting on it, and this become an unstable body. So this is a nice example given, two examples. One case when the body is large area, when the liquid is in the large area, this is a stable scenario. But when it is in a slender area, the liquid is in the center area, though it is floating, it has become unstable. Another example, a floating body here given, same example, this is weight, and this is the buoyant force, FB, this is the weight. And the moment it shifted to this is a stable position, this is an unstable position. Now it is the moment it is in a stable position, because now restraining couple is parallel to the meta center. What is meta center? I'll come to the next slide. So now the buoyant force is in the same axis of meta center. So the meta center try to push it back to its parallel to the center of gravity, right? So this meta center will push left, and then it becomes stable. But here, the moment is shifted much, the meta center has shifted left to the center of gravity. So it will not go back to its original position. It will move further to the left hand position, and it become unstable. Okay. So this is, the body is stable if the body is bottom heavy, and thus the center of gravity is below the centroid B of the body, or if the meta center is above the point G. However, the body is unstable if meta center is below G. Here, meta center was above G. Here, meta center is below G. So these are the two conditions. If meta center is above, which try to use the restoring couple, this will be a stable condition, and meta center below G, this will be an unstable condition. So let's look into the meta center. What is meta center? It is defined as the point about which a body starts oscillating when the body is tilted by a small angle, right? So this is my center of gravity. This is my buoyancy force center. Okay. The moment the body is tilted, a new center of axis and a center of gravity form, which is known as meta center, right? Now this line of the meta center may also be defined as the point at which the line of action of the force, line of action of buoyancy force, will meet the normal axis. Okay. So this is my buoyancy force. If I draw a vertical line, so this is my initial normal axis was this one, right? Now since there is an angular displacement, the normal axis has also tilted. So if you draw a vertical line, the point of intersection is called the meta center. Okay. So this is my meta center. Now in this case, the meta center is above the center of gravity, so this will be a stable condition. But if the meta center, like previous case, meta center, if you draw the vertical line, meta center is below the center of gravity, this will be an unstable condition. Okay, so this is how meta center has been determined. I think last class we talked about Pascal law, but we did not derive the expression. So I have used it here so that students can understand the Pascal's law, because we talked about how hydrostatic equilibrium remains in a submerged liquid, or the pressures are uniform on a surface throughout the sides of a suspended body. So how does it determine the Pascal's law? That's why I put these slides. I think let's look into this derivations. It states the pressure or intensity of pressure at a point in a static fluid equal in all directions. So I have given a fluid elements of very small dimension dx This is the dx, this is dy, and this is ds. And the angle between dy and ds is theta. Consider an arbitrary fluid elements of wedge shape. This is a wedge shape in a fluid mass at rest. Let the width of the element perpendicular to the plane of paper is unity, and px, py, and ps are the pressure of intensity. So px, you can see px is applying on this surface, py is applying on this surface, and pz is applying perpendicular to the surface, right? So these are the three pressures being applied, acting on the face AB, AC, and BC respectively. Let us ABC, I already told you theta. The forces acting on the elements are pressure force normal to the surface and weight of the element in the vertical direction. So these forces balance each other. Now forces on the faces are, on the face AB, pressure into area of face AB. So pressure on the face AB, pressure is Px, area is dy. Similarly on the face AC, pressure Py, and the area of the face is dx. And force on the BC, Pz, ds into 1. Weight of the element, mass of element into g. Mass of element can be determined by volume of element and density into g. We are considering water, so density is 1. Sorry, we are considering density rho, and volume is AB into AC by 2 into 1, right? This is just like a formula we have calculated, because you know, like this is 90 degree if you consider, so this will be AB AC into 1 by 2. That is the area, and then 1 is the length of the one edge, right? Resolving the force in x direction, we have Px, x direction. So x direction is which direction? This is my x direction. So we are considering from left to right, right? So Px dy into 1, and then this Pz ds cos theta is acting on the, if you take the component in the minus x-axis, that is acting in the opposite direction, that is equal to 0. So this is just simplified and become ds. This is the expression, but from the expression ds cos theta equal to ab dy. So if you put together ds cos theta equal to dy, then become px dy into 1, pz dy into 1. So px equal to pz. Similarly, resolving the force x direction, you get px dx, py dx into 1, pz ds 1 cos 90 minus theta. And now you are considering y direction, and you have to take into consideration y, because y is ABAC, that is dx dy by 2 into 1 rho g. So if simplified this, this is the expression. But ds sin theta again dx, so if you just put together this value, this become py into pz. So px equal to py and py equal to pz. So px, py, pz. So the above equation shows that pressure at any point in x, y, and z directions is equal. That is how you derive the expression, or it's a Pascal's law. Now, how do you determine the pressure variation? Then another expression is there. Pressure variation in a fluid at rest. We are considering a more rectangular body which is at a distance, submerged in a distance z from top of the surface. The area is given px del A on this, and let delta A is the cross-sectional area of the element. Delta G is the height of the fluid element. This is the delta G. P is the pressure on face AB, and Z is the distance of fluid element from free surface, as I mentioned. The forces acting on the fluid element are given by pressure force AB, P into del A, that is the area into pressure, and acting perpendicular to face AB. This face, right, P into del A. And the another force, pressure force on CD. CD is which one? This is P into del P del Z into Z into del A. Del P del Z into A, acting perpendicular to CD. And weight of the fluid is density mass into volume, rho G del A into del G, because that is the volume. The pressure force on the surface BC and AD are equal and opposite. So equilibrium, that the forces will be balanced. If you take the upward direction positive, weight is the downward force positive and the upward force negative. So weight of the body is this, and the pressure force on the upward surface is this, that is AB, and this is the pressure force on the CD. So you just put together all this value, and this is the expression is comes, and del P by del G equal to rho G, because cancelling del A del G on both sides, it become del P by del G equal to rho G. You cancel del P by del G equal to rho G. Rho G is nothing but weight. So where W is the weight of the density. So this is actually, so equation 2.4 is states that the rate of increase of pressure, because del P by del G is what? Rate of increase of pressure is height, right? In a vertical direction is equal to the weight density of the fluid, right? This is hydrostatic law. Now if you integrate this, you take this del P rho G Z and you integrate, then it's become P equal to rho G G, rho G Z, where P is the pressure above atmospheric pressure and Z is the height of the point from P surface. So if you take into this, so Z equal to rho by, sorry, P by rho G. So this is the expression. And Z is called the pressure head. So Z has a unit of length. P is having a unit of Newton, right? That is the pressure. This is how you determine the Z. We have already solved a lot of numerical. So this expression, that's why this derive it so that people can understand. And this expression is going to be useful again when you're going to talk about Bernoulli's law. So Z equal to P by rho Z, that is the expression for pressure head. Now let us look into some numericals. A hydraulic press has a ram of 20 centimeter diameter and a plunger of 3 centimeter diameter. It is used for lifting a weight of 30 kilonewton. Find the force. So all the parameters of the given. Area you calculate, diameter of that plunger given. So area of the plunger, the weight lifted is given 30 kilonewton, that is 30,000 Newton. Pressure is force by area, as you know. The pressure force acting by Pascal law, this pressure is transmitted equally to all directions. So here pressure transmitted in the ram, force by area. So force acting on the ram, pressure intensity in the area of the ram. So force area is given how much in the ram? Area of the plunger 7.068 into 10 power minus 4. And area of the ram is given 0.0314. That is the total amount of force acting on the ram. And this is the force acting on the ram, is this the weight lifted, 30,000 Newton. So if you equilibrate this, you calculate the amount of force required for the plunger is 675.2 Newton. Okay. This is just a hydrostatic equilibrium. I mean, balance, I mean, basics of Pascal's law, force balance in two directions, right? In the weight balance and the force balance, we are calculating the amount of force required in the plunger. Another example, very straightforward, an open tank contains water up to a depth of 2 meters and above it an oil of specific gravity 0.9 is floating at 1 meter depth, right? Find the pressure intensity at the interface. This is the point A, and at the bottom. Similar, all the parameters given Z1, Z2, specific gravity, density. So density of oil is 900 kg. The pressure at this point, rho GH. So just calculate, put this value 0.88929, and pressure at point 2 will be for this side and this side. So this 0.8829 plus for this liquid, that is 1000 into 9.802, 2.8449 Newton per centimeter. Okay.